The Ottoman Turks. As Persia grew stronger, the Ottoman Turks who lived to the west of Persia grew weaker. But like Persia, the Ottoman Empire was rescued by a great and cruel ruler, the Sultan Murat. When Murat was born into a royal Ottoman family, Shah Abbas was already an old man, famous for his might. As the young Murat grew, he learned the history of the empire he would someday rule. He learned that a single Turkish tribe, the Seljuk tribe, had wandered from Central Asia into the Middle East, back in the days when the Islamic Empire still ruled over Persian land. Just as the Ghaznavid Turks had rebelled against their Islamic rulers and taken control of the land of Persia, so the Seljuk tribe had rebelled and taken control of their own little piece of the Muslim Empire. The Seljuk Turks were fearless, savage fighters and soon expanded their kingdom. They took part of Persia for their own. They took land away from the Byzantine Empire. They captured Syria and Palestine. But the Turks had always been nomads. Although they could conquer an empire, they didn't do a very good job of collecting taxes, fixing roads, and passing laws. Their empire began to fall apart. As it collapsed, one Turkish leader, a warrior named Osman, gathered his followers around himself and determined to save what he could. Osman and his followers lived just above the northwest corner of the Mediterranean Sea, in the country which we now call Turkey. Turkey soon became the center of the new Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire. Now the two great empires of the Middle East, the Persian and the Ottoman, were both ruled by Turks. Under Osman's leadership, the Ottoman Turks captured a much larger kingdom than the Seljuks had ever ruled. They fought their way east, across the Tigris and the Euphrates, all the way to the borders of Persia. They captured most of Arabia, including the city of Baghdad. They took the Byzantine capital, Constantinople, and renamed it Istanbul. They claimed Egypt and North Africa, just as the Muslim Empire had before them. And then they did something that frightened the rest of the world. They crossed over the Bosporus Strait, the water that divided Asia from Europe. Now the Turks were invading European land. The kings of Europe began to get nervous. How far would the Ottoman Empire spread? While they watched, the Ottoman Turks conquered Greece, fought their way up into Russia, and kept on coming west. The Sultan of the Ottomans now called himself sovereign of the two lands and of the two seas, because he ruled a kingdom that stretched over two continents, Asia and Europe. But like the ancient Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire grew too large. The sultans began to spend too much money on feasts, palaces, and silks. So much Spanish gold had flooded into Europe from South America that no one wanted the silver coins of the Ottomans anymore. One Ottoman writer remarked, "The coins have become as worthless as drops of dew." The Ottoman officials became corrupt and stole as much food and money as they wanted. "The empire," wrote an Englishman who lived during the days of the Ottomans, "has become like an old body, crazed through many vices." The Ottomans even lost control of Baghdad, their prized city. But then Murat inherited the throne of the Ottomans. No one expected great things of Murat. He was only 11 years old, plain, quiet, and fat. His mother insisted on helping him rule for 10 whole years. While she commanded Murat's armies, the Ottoman Empire went on shrinking. So many Ottoman soldiers were captured in battle and sold as slaves that you could buy an Ottoman soldier in the Russian slave markets for the price of a drink of fermented grain juice. Murat waited. He exercised, training with a bow until he could shoot an arrow through a metal sheet 4 inches thick. He threw spears until he could kill a raven sitting on the top of a mosque a mile away. He wrestled until he could pick up 2 grown men, one in each hand, and fling them in different directions. Finally, Murat's time came. When he was 23 years old, the Ottoman army revolted. They marched on the Sultan's palace, announcing that they planned to rule the empire from now on. "Hand over your Grand Vizier to us," they demanded. "You should listen to us, not him." Murat didn't want to hand over the Grand Vizier, who was his friend, but then the Vizier himself came forward. "Sultan," he said to Murat, "let 1,000 slaves like me perish for the safety of your throne. I will die a martyr, and the guilt for my blood will be on their heads." He drew his sword and sprang forward, aiming a blow at the rebel leader. But the mob swarmed around him, stabbing him and then cutting off his head. Murat realized that the soldiers would attack him next, so he pretended to agree to their demands. Finally, they let Murat return to his own quarters, thinking that the young sultan would now do exactly as the army suggested. But Murat quietly sent his own household spies to find out who had started the riot. Soon he discovered the ringleader, one of his own officials, Recep Pasha. Murat had already made Recep his new Grand Vizier, but now he realized that Recep hoped to rule the empire through telling Murat what to do. One morning, Recep was leaving a meeting when a household servant approached him and bowed low. "Please," he said, "come to the palace. The Sultan wishes to speak with you." Recep agreed and followed along. The servant escorted him to a door and opened it. Recep walked through and found himself surrounded by the Sultan's personal force of assassins. He heard Murat's voice command, "Cut off the head of the traitor," and immediately it was done. Murat then ordered Recep's body flung from the palace gates, right out into a group of army leaders. Terrified, the leaders ran away. Then Murat sent his own spies out through the city, telling them to find and kill on the spot anyone involved in the rebellion. Knowing that rebels often formed their plans while drinking together in taverns late at night, he closed all the taverns permanently. Anyone found drinking wine was instantly put to death. Soon the word spread. Murat was no longer a weak child. He would not tolerate rebellion. Murat's power grew, and so did his ruthlessness. When his chief musician began to play him a Persian song, he beheaded the man instantly. When one of his doctors didn't cure him quickly enough, he forced the doctor to drink a dose of poison. Soon, whenever he approached, everyone would freeze completely, afraid to move or speak in case they might accidentally sound rebellious. But Murat's cruelty stopped the decay of the Ottoman Empire. With his army and his advisors too frightened to disobey him, he set out on a quest to recapture Ottoman land. He took back lands that the Persians had claimed. He recaptured the city of Baghdad. He spread the empire back toward its old borders once more. The decline of the Ottoman Empire had been halted. Shortly afterward, Murat fell ill. He lay in bed for 2 weeks, growing steadily worse. At the age of 28, he died, leaving behind him an empire rescued.